Morning team, it's me, your favourite Jordan at the screen, and today I wish to talk to you about the pay gap. You know, that tired, old, boring feminist talking point about how women supposedly earn less money for the same work as men. Although I've noticed recently they've dropped the modifier of the same work. They're just saying that women are now being paid less. Because, they're starting to catch on that, trying to say that women are suffering smaller paychecks because of direct discrimination on the grounds of sex. They've realised that that's just complete garbage. It's illegal, and there's absolutely no evidence whatsoever to suggest this. However, there is certainly evidence to suggest that women are taking home less money per year than men. But there's a variety of reasons, and they know this, so they figure just give that talking point and forget the rest. But those of you who pay attention to these talking points will realise or have noticed that there's already been a payday this year, an equal pay day. What's with the second one? Because one happened, 5 days ago on November the 9th, and there was another one earlier in the year on April the 4th. And how can you have two equal pay days in 1 year? Well, the first equal pay day is to denote how much further into the next year women have to keep working to earn the same amount as men did in the previous year. So April the 4th was the date that women had to keep working into 2017 to earn as much as men did in 2016. And the one that happened 5 days ago on November 9th is to show at what day in the year that women stop working for money. So they're now supposedly working for free until the end of the year. Except they're not. They're still taking paychecks home. But, all those things aside, we'll just ignore that. But I'm not... Oh, just kicked my microphone. Good boy. But I'm not here today to necessarily refute the pay gap or to go into why the pay gap exists, the earnings gap, this, that, and the other. I will fleetingly touch on it. But my main topic of discussion today is how the very source of the pay gap, where they get the statistics from, the Office for National Statistics, even they are saying, feminists, shut the fuck up. Women aren't earning less because of sexism. They're earning less because of their own choices, because of this, that, and the other factors. It's not sexism that's doing it. Now, they don't put it quite as bluntly or as curtly as I just did, and they don't even name the feminists. They certainly imply there are certainly invested groups that have been pushing it, but they don't overtly dictate or overtly state who it is. They're quite diplomatic about it. So let me just get whacking through my script. So, their report where the where this pay gap statistic is discussed is the Annual Survey of Hours and Earnings 2017, Provisional and 2016 Revised Results. They update it periodically when the numbers are updated, etc., but it's the Annual Survey of Hours and Earnings where the statistic comes from. So if we go down to section 7, we find gender pay differences, and this is it. This is our area of interest. This is what the feminists cite when backing up their arguments. So, let us quote it. The gender pay gap is calculated as the difference between average hourly earnings, excluding overtime, of men and women as a proportion of average hourly earnings, excluding overtime, of men's earnings. For example, a 4% gender pay gap denotes that women earn 4% less on average than men. And I notice something slightly odd. Whilst they do refer to the pay gap, which is stupid, they should call it the earnings gap, but when they refer to it, they don't refer to it as men and women being paid differently for the same work, rather than men earn more money than women. And they do this because, and I'm quoting again, using hourly earnings better accounts for the fact that men work on average more hours per week than women. Which is true, because according to my research, using the same source, the Annual Survey of Hours and Earnings, and there's another sub-survey they got on it, but using those information I managed to find, and I've got the article linked. Maybe I'll put it in the description box below, or it's definitely in the script, in the article script for this video, so just have a look in there. But I found that the average male work week is 34% longer than the average female work week. The average female work week is 25.7 hours, and the average male work week is 34.6 hours, and I have discussed this in a previous video. And even the title of the survey suggests it's earnings rather than pay, because there's a massive difference between earnings and pay, but I'm not going to go into that today. Moving the microphone again because I like to fidget. So, the data. They also split it into part-time and full-time, because men and women like to do different work. Men predominantly work full-time, and more women work part-time. Considerably more women work part-time than men do. And so let's quote. In April 2017, the gender pay gap for median earnings for full-time employees decreased to 9.1% from 9.4% in 2016. This is the lowest since the survey began in 1997, where the gender pay gap was 17.4%, although the gender pay gap has changed relatively little in recent years. For part-time employees separately, we see a different pattern, whereby women are paid more per hour on average than men. However, as with the full-time gender pay gap, this part-time gender pay gap moved closer to zero, from negative 6.1% in April 2016 to negative 5.1% in April 2017, as earnings for part-time men increased by more than for women. So what we see is that the pay gap is getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and every single time this report is released, it says this is the smallest it's been since records began. Because that's what's happening. It's getting better. Things are getting better, irrespective of the feminists whinging about income inequality and how women are so oppressed because blah, 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 blah. But deciding that wasn't quite enough, the ONS then decides to go full nuclear. Especially on any old idiot who thinks that they can use this data to prove some sort of gender ideological point. Quote, "It should be noted that the gender pay gap figures presented in this bulletin do not show differences in rates of pay for comparable jobs, as they are affected by factors such as the proportion of men and women working part-time or in different occupations. For example, a high proportion of women work in occupations such as administration and caring, which tend to offer lower salaries. Rest in peace, all feminists." I love that quote. I just love that quote. Do not show differences in rates of pay for comparable jobs. That's basically what the ONS is saying. But the fun does not stop there. The ONS discusses their methodology in greater detail in the document Guide to Interpreting Annual Survey of Hours and Earnings, ASH, Estimates. Whence they say in section 9, how can the gender pay gap for all employees be higher than the gender pay gap for full-time employees? And it says, and I quote, "The gender pay gap estimate is calculated as a differential proportion of two median estimates, the middle points of the data, one for female and one for males. The composition of the male and female employee workforces are quite different, with more women working part-time than men, 42% compared with 12% respectively, and the source of that is the Labour Force Survey, quarter 2, April to June 2017, table EMP04. Because the hourly earnings of part-time employees tend to be less on average than the earnings of full-time employees, this means women are more likely to receive lower rates of pay. It's this fact that helps explain why the gender pay gap for all full-time and part-time employees is greater than the gender pay gap for full-time employees only." And this should be obvious to all, that if you take the middle point of the data, and as 42% of female workers are in part-time compared to 12% of male workers, that means the median female worker will be earning considerably less than the median male worker. It's so obvious. It's basic statistics. It's so ridiculously simple how it cannot be fathomed. How they can't grasp this, I do not know. But they can't. They are completely incapable. They outright refuse to grasp this. However, despite that obviousness, despite how easy it should be, the ONS don't think that people will still grasp this. They don't think it's within the comprehension of some certain folks of our society. So they go on to say, "Consider the following fictitious example shown in Table 2, representing the male and female samples collected on the annual survey of hours and earnings. The male sample contains more full-time employees, while the female sample contains more part-time employees. When considering the full-time employees only, the majority of the male sample is used, whilst typically only the higher earners of the female sample are considered. Due to this, when taking the medians, that is the middle point of the selected sample, the gender pay gap is relatively small. When all employees are considered, the typically lower paid part-time workers are included, of which there are more lower paid female workers than male. As a consequence, this causes the gap to increase, usually as a result of the female median decreasing." Sweet Lord above, I could not have put it better myself. Actually, I could not have put it better myself. That's considerably better than I could have put it. That's why it came from the ONS rather than some dumb numpty like me. And now you can see on the screen the fictitious example. You know, representing the hourly earnings, excluding overtime for men and women by work pattern. It's right there. There's their little example. And now I'm going to put up Table 3, the calculated gender pay gap for the fictitious ASH sample shown in Table 2. There it is. It's that there. They're trying to they're trying to give it to you. They're trying to spoon feed to you why the gender pay gap is not because of sex-based direct discrimination, but is in fact caused by female choice. And the fact that that they have to put in these fictitious examples like it's some fucking school book for some children trying to learn basic maths. I think it's hilarious. What they're doing, that they're treating feminists like school children because they just can't grasp why the pay gap exists. It's beautiful. It really is beautiful. It's almost poetic. They're infantilizing the feminists because they're so fucking stupid. It's great. It's great. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say. I don't really need to refute the pay gap when the very source of the pay gap does it for us. Just glorious. So any time, like on any chat show, any discussion with a feminist, oh, but the pay gap is because of this, you just go, well, hang on a second. Where did you get that statistic from? Where did you get 9.1% from, or 17.4%? Well, if those are the numbers, I cannot quite recall, but I'm just picking them out, and I think it was 9.1% or whatever. But when they pull out that statistic, I ask them, where did you get that statistic from? They go, well, it's the official statistic. I go, oh, you mean from the Home Office, the Office of National Statistics? Well, guess fucking what? Even they're against it, you dumb cunts. But nope, that's the end of my video. I need to stop there because I'll just ramble on forever about nothing and that. So, until the next time, take care of yourselves and toodle pip.